You're listening to Winnipeg's Classic 107. My name is Simon Rusnak. As we say goodbye to summer and settle back into the usual routine, or perhaps find a new one altogether, we welcome back Chris Hall of McNally Robinson Booksellers with a favorite feature here on the station, What to Read. Chris has joined me digitally with his picks for the month of September. Hello, Chris.
Hello, Simon. Great to be back.
And great to have you here. So before we get to this month's selections, tell us a little bit about the summer. How are things down at McNally's?
Well, it's okay. We've had a crash course in making it up as we go along. I've had to simplify and kind of think about who we really are, which is booksellers. So we're concentrating on selling books, and the restaurant is limping along, and so are the rest of what we used to do. So we're doing okay, though. I have no complaints given the larger picture.
Well, I'm glad to hear that. And I must say, I was down at the store a couple of times this summer picking up some new reads, and it felt great in there. I mean, most, if not everyone, was wearing a mask, especially as
Mhm.
physical distancing can be tough when you pop around
Yep.
a bookshelf and suddenly there's a person there browsing a title. But here we are now, settling back into whatever sort of routine we find ourselves in. And if people are looking to continue the vacation, your first selection that you have queued up for September keeps that theme going. Tell us about this latest from Thomas King.
Yeah, well, Thomas King was one of my favorites. His new novel is called Indians on Vacation. I read it last week when I was on vacation, and it served me well. He's authored several books: Greengrass Running Water, one of my favorite novels, the Dreadful Water mystery series, and of course the nonfiction book Inconvenient Indian. Um, King does a great job of combining light and amusing. He's got a great sense of humor with the serious and profound. And in this one, he tells the story of Mimi and Bird, a retired indigenous couple. They are traveling in Prague, and Mimi is an enthusiastic traveler. Bird is much less so. He's grumpily agreed to be dragged along. The story alternates between them in Prague and what they're seeing and doing there, and their past as individuals, as well as uh, a couple, a long together couple. Uh, again, King strikes the note. The tone is largely amusing, but he is. This is about two people who've grown up and are living as Indigenous people, and how that's different and challenging. And now they're traveling in Europe, and that gives them a different perspective on things, I think.
I mean, one of the foremost writers, American-Canadian professor now
Hmm.
of English at Guelph University,
Yeah.
really an established writer who, as you mentioned, blends that biting humor while addressing issues of marginalizations of First Nations peoples and hearing a new perspective. From an established writer like King to a debut novel, tell us about
Mhm.
Luster.
Luster is by Raven Leilani. Now, she's a brand new author. This is her debut novel. This novel was really hyped, and I've been around long enough to be very skeptical about a book that gets overhyped, I guess. And so you can take it from me. In this case, it's well deserved. It's a very, very interesting novel. Stories about Edie, a young Black woman living in Brooklyn, uh, 23 or so, and she stumbles into a relationship with a white married man about twice her age. They, uh, uh, I don't think I've been surprised by a novel as much as this one. Literally reading the beginning of a sentence and not expecting to be at the end of that sentence where it takes you, and then the story itself too. Just the directions it takes. I wasn't expecting it in so many ways. So it was a very, very uh, startling read, I guess, in that sense. And so a novel well worth reading unto itself. Of course, in the current climate of Black Lives Matter that is going on, it's a timely book too.
All about hearing new perspectives. And one of the things
Hmm.
that I regularly saw when I was preparing for this interview and reading reviews, the word that kept coming up was raw. It's a very raw
Yeah,
read. Does that sound about
it,
right?
it, it it is. It is. It's she's struggling in life. It's a tough life she leads, and of course contrast that with this middle-aged white man who has it much easier. He's got his own struggles, but they pale in comparison to hers. So yeah, it's another perspective on the world other than certainly my perspective, for example.
So where do you want to go next? What next is queued up in your suggested reading pile?
Well, we're off to nonfiction, a book called Vesper Flights by Helen Macdonald. H is for Hawk is Helen Macdonald's previous book, and that remains one of the most standout books for me that I've read in several years. The language and it's about her raising a hawk, and I had no interest in it, and yet, in fact, I was just pulled along. She's such a good writer. This new book is a collection of essays that she's written over the years. But lest you think that it's just filler material in between real books, this one is good. Her writing is world class. I just find myself again surprised and startled by what she writes. She's a very knowledgeable. She's a nature writer, if we have to call her something, but her knowledge is wide ranging. She uses words and she has knowledge that I'm very very new to, I guess. So that's part of my experience with her. But she is able to describe the world in a way that just makes me look at it and see it, and now, you know, it kind of changes my view of the world when there's so much going on that I had no idea and never think about and had really no knowledge of. I really like reading her.
So based on what I've seen, one of the, as you mentioned, preeminent nature writers today, a regular contributor to the New York Times Magazine, winner of a number of different awards. I'm curious. I mean, the power of a great essayist. What type of topics does she broach in this collection of essays? Is it rather wide ranging? Like, how are these essays structured and put together?
It is wide ranging. I wouldn't say that it has a structure in terms of any continuity to it. She's all over the place, but that's part of the power of her writing. She's, you know, one moment she's in Chile and in the arid desert because they are researching what life on Mars might be like, and the next moment she's talking about purple martins because she's put a house under the eaves of her house, and or the hares that are boxing on her as she drives home from work. It's almost any jumping off point. I think authors that are really good and really established, they somehow, or they at some point in their careers, I think, get to decide where they go next. And that's my impression of this collection of essays. She's good enough that her editors and her employers, I guess, have just said, well, what do you want to write? And so she does.
And what a treat that is for us, the readers.
Yeah.
So, The Lying Life of Adults. Tell us about this one. I mean, I'll let you take
this one. This is the new novel by Elena Ferrante. We're very excited by this one, The Lying Life of Adults, as you say. She came on our radar and established herself, at least in North America, with the Neapolitan Quartet. That got changed. At least the first two books got made into an HBO series called My Brilliant Friend.
Yeah.
I assume they have plans for more. I haven't kept up with that. But
well, I remember you talking about them and recommending My Brilliant Friend. And we talked, this was years ago, we talked about at the time that the series was just being filmed.
I see. Yeah, I didn't recall that. Yeah, probably that would have been the fourth installment in in that series. So my affection for her remains very strong. Her novels are set in Naples, at least that quartet and this new one is. The new one is it tells a story of a young girl named Giovanna who lives in Naples. She's just coming into her adolescence, and she's starting to realize that her parents and the adults around her, well, they lie, I guess. There's no better way to put it. But this is where Ferrante is really, really good. She gets right into the psychology of us and how we tell stories that make ourselves look as good as we can, even the stories we tell ourselves, who we are, what we don't accept about ourselves, I guess, or have trouble accepting about ourselves. And her novels really get to those moments when the characters have to acknowledge these things. Maybe they only acknowledge it to themselves, but as readers, we get to glimpse those moments and recognize them in ourselves. Maybe we manipulate people a little bit to get what we want, and don't like that about ourselves. So she is. That's the title, The Lying Life of Adults, and the book was lying around, and my 13-year-old had a few questions about what that might be about. So I had to explain myself a little bit.
And I do want to give a quick shout out, especially being a singer and having done some very poor translations when I used to sing art songs. These are translations done by Anne Goldstein, like with the Neapolitan Quartet as well, right? And you always got to give the translator some credit.
Yeah, good for you. Yes, absolutely. This it's an Italian novel. Elena Ferrante is one of those mysterious authors. We don't actually know who she is
Yeah,
exactly.
pseudonym, right?
Yeah, yeah, and mhm.
So we mentioned how her past novels have been kind of crafted into TV shows, and I setting up this last one, I know I'm late to the party, but I'm only watching Vikings now, which is a show I know rooted in history, but there
Yeah.
are some familiar real life characters that have been totally embellished.
Hmm.
If for instance, someone who's interested in the show, like myself, wanted grounded in truth history and research, this last title might be one that I should pick up, right?
Absolutely. I was going to say exactly that. That it's a book, a history book called Children of Ash and Elm. It's by Neil Price, and it is a large 500-page history of the Vikings. I admit to having a little Viking in me. I tell people not to worry. It's a harmless little Viking, but I am fascinated by the Vikings, I have to say, and I don't think I'm alone. I think the TV show uh, came. I was already fascinated by the time I
Yeah.
watched the TV show. So Neil Price is very good at telling. Well, he tells stories. He's a charming writer, so this is a very easy history to read, but very knowledgeable. He takes us through the 300 years of what they call the Viking Age, from obviously Scandinavia, but through North America, of course, but also into continental Europe and Britain, the raids. He doesn't allow us to lose sight of the fact that these raids and so on were brutal. There was, killing and the raping and the pillaging. That was real, and he doesn't allow us to forget that, which I found kind of a new way of telling history, maybe, that have a tendency to gloss over that bit, maybe. But the Vikings had a lot more to contribute to. Their stories that have come down in the sagas, their the politics they've made contributions to, the cultural contributions. So they left a lot behind them, and he tells a great version of that.
Well, Chris, again, it might have to be one that I have to check out. And of course, the great Icelandic community that is here in Manitoba, maybe a little bit of a
Absolutely.
local connection there as well. It's been
Yeah.
great to have you back on the air, Chris. Thanks for
Thanks,
sharing these
Simon.
suggestions with us. Always good seeing you.
Yeah, very nice seeing you. Thank you.
You can find all of Chris's picks up on the website, classic107.com, with all the appropriate links.